Good evening, everyone. Right, it's been a while since I've done a live stream, so just let me know if you can hear me okay, if the sound is right. Okay, right, this light is a bit bright in my face. I'm gonna just move it. Is that better? Right, people in the chat, let me know if you can hear me okay. And then we'll get going. We can hear you. Excellent. Hurrah. Okay, great. Right. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. The last one was May, 2nd of May last year, after I went to that supposedly Marxist talk. Other people have said that these people aren't Marxists at all. That was the Socialist Workers' Party. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me at such short notice. I just thought I'd do a live stream because the Darlington nurses have been at the tribunal now for 2 weeks. And on the 1st of November, I was at the 199 Days Later rally. And there were many speeches there. And one was by Teresa Steele, who had her appointment for surgery cancelled because she didn't believe that men can be women. And she did a really good speech about why it's so important to have single-sex spaces, well, across the board, but particularly in hospitals. And that made me think about a situation a few years ago from before I peaked, where, sorry, I visited a friend in hospital, and he's a bloke, and he was on a women's ward, and I thought nothing of it. And sometimes I wonder, like, why is it that so many people can't see what's going on or refuse to look at it? And then I think, well, you were kind of in that place at some point. So sometimes I remind myself of how blind and ignorant I was. They seemed like such simpler times. Right. So I thought I'd tell you what happened. And, you know, as they say, they so often say, have you ever met a trans person? Well, here's one of those experiences. So who was this bloke? He was someone I'd known for maybe only about 2 years at the time. I met him when he was a bloke. I mean, he's still a bloke, obviously, but he hadn't come out as he hadn't quite given into his lady feels yet. So we met, we were doing a play. And the first time I met him, I was like, whoa, he's a very tall, he has a very striking appearance. He's a very tall guy, about at least 6'2", maybe 6'3", 6'4", at least 6'2". Tall. He's from originally South Asia, brown skin, really long raven black hair to about his, well, at least down to his chest, I guess. Dark eyes, strong jaw, good bone structure, just quite a striking looking man. And he always had a big hat, like a fedora. And we did a play for a couple of nights. Hello, Joe. Hello, Dusty, by the way. And hello, Natalie and Charles. So we did a play together for a couple of nights, and we got on really well. And then he kind of fell off the radar. And I asked a mutual friend, hey, what's going on with him? And apparently he wasn't in a very good space mentally, but that was apparently because of all this gender stuff. But then he found his true self, which was, oh, I'm a lady. And then a few years later, I met him again in a pub. And this is the first time I saw him in women's clothes. And at the time, I just wanted to be supportive. Like, I knew nothing about any of this stuff, right? This is well before I peaked. So I started peaking in 2019, and this would have been 2017. So all I wanted to do was be supportive. It's very naive. Came from a very naive place. I just thought, oh, he's going through a tough time, and he was wearing mascara, and I just went, oh my God, your eyes were made for mascara. It was kind of superficial, to be honest. And then actually he was there with a friend, another guy who thinks he's a woman, who was quite a bit shorter, and next to him looks quite dainty. But this is all about context, isn't it? Because on his own, he doesn't look quite as dainty, but next to this bloke, he looked, a bit more petite. And so the smaller one went to the toilet, and then my friend went, she's trans. And I was like, yeah, duh. It was obvious. Now, I never saw him as a woman. I never did. I just thought, he's making this change. I'll be supportive. And then we messaged a few times, and then he said he'd broken his hip. Now, at the time, he was only 47 or 48, so it's quite a young age to break your hip, and he'd only been on estrogen for a year, so I don't know whether that had any impact on that. But anyway, he broke his hip, so I thought, okay, I'll go and see him in hospital. So he was at, University College Hospital, I think. Let me just check. Yes. So I go into the hospital, go to the ward, and I had to go through these double doors, and then there was a hallway in like an L shape. So you could either you come through the doors, and then you could either go straight or right. On the left, that's where that ward was, and it was quite a small one. There were only about 8 beds. So it was like a bathroom, I think, and then about 8 beds. It was quite small, and there was no wall or separation between the hall and that ward, apart from like a sort of like a short wall, like a half wall, up to about this level. And he was right there with his bed, right there where that wall was, right where that hallway was, and where people walked past. So my first thought was, oh, he should be in this window because he'll be safer there. That was my first thought, because I thought all these people are walking past and all they see is just a bloke with long hair in a bed. And I somehow thought that made him vulnerable. I didn't think about any of the women on the ward. So like now I'm like, how could you not even have entertained like the concerns of these other women or how they might have felt? Because as I said earlier, I didn't even think about him as an actual woman. But I thought he had every right to be there on that ward. Just going to have a look at the chat to see what's happening. Dusty also said he peaked in 2019. Dusty, tell me what it was that kind of made you go, Right. Oh, and someone says, you're such a hot man. Okay, well, I'll take that. I'll drink to that, actually. Cheers. So he's there in the bed. There wasn't anyone directly opposite him because that's where the bathroom was. But there was someone diagonally across from him, a woman. And she didn't look that comfortable with him being there. Dusty just said, my wife told me that they really meant it when they said trans women are women. That piqued me. Okay, good. Aha, yes, Charles, an actual glass mug, the proper way to have a cup of tea, at least for the Dutch. So there was also a quite like an older lady, must have been in her late 70s. She'd also broken her hip, and a few other women. So he's there, and then I show up, and then some of his other friends showed up as well. All blokes who think they're women, right? I think there were 3 of them. So there's 3 of those blokes stood around the bed. There's myself, and there's him in the bed on a women-only ward. So now when I look back, I can totally understand why that woman diagonally across from us was so uncomfortable. And I saw her giving us looks, or not necessarily giving us evils, but just looking very uncomfortable. And all I thought at the time was like, oh, you're so narrow-minded. Oh my God. And that's it. Like, as I said earlier, I didn't even entertain that any longer. That I didn't give her any credit. I didn't give her any attention. I just dismissed it out of hand. So now when you're having all these argy-bargies with other people and you can't get them to see sense, I'm like, you were there. I mean, I was never gung-ho about trans rights, because I didn't even know anything about it. I only know this bloke, and I wanted to be kind. You know how we all want to be kind. So, the empathy trap, right? And these other blokes that was stood around the bed, they were tall as well. And one was wearing those really big boots, like Doc Martens, but almost like platform versions of them. He was really tall. And he looked nothing like it's just a tall bloke with a chunky face and his big boots and his man voice. There was another who was a bit shorter, and at the time, I'm like, wow, you're a guy? Like, I was confused by it. I don't know how I'd respond to that today, to this bloke, and if I just go, yeah, bloke. But this is, as I said, this was 2017, and I wasn't quite as au fait with everything. So, and the other one was quite tall as well. So there's the 3 of us. And also, like, my friend at the time has quite a deep voice. So suddenly this ward is also filled with men's voices. And then something happened that at the time I just sort of passed off as weird. But now again, I'm like, how couldn't I see what was going on? So my friend's in the bed and he's telling me, I've got my date for the surgery, or something along those lines. So basically, he had a date to get his todger inverted. And that was about 6 months away. And I was like, oh, you're going to do that? And he's like, yes. And he was really looking forward to it. And for me, the thought of, that no longer being there is just like, it makes me wince. So him just casually saying, I'm going to have that surgery, I was like, oh God. And he's like, I've taken a picture of it. I was like, okay. And this was part of some kind of photographic project that he was involved in. So there was a photographer who, I think it was a woman who thinks she's a man, who was going to do some kind of artistic photographic project about trans bodies. And they were going to have a picture of him before the surgery and after the surgery in exactly the same pose. Oh, we've got Irish boy 1888 in the house. And he goes, trans rights, because he believes, well, I don't even know if it is a boy, of course, because they'll call themselves whatever they want, but you never know if that's actually true. Yeah, he believes that men are women and women are men. So it might be an interesting guest to have here this evening. Right. So he told me about this project and that he was going to take part in it. And they'd already shot the first picture. So it was just him in very skimpy lingerie, blue, I think. and he didn't have anything here, but he was wearing the top anyway, and the bottoms were crotchless. So, and then he stood there, when he kind of stood like this. So he was with one leg up on a chair, very ladylike. So you could really see his meat and two veg. It was there, on full display. And then he was going to have the exact same picture after the surgery when it was all gone. Pop the Cat Alone Love says, if ever you wondered whether this was a fetish, you see, I had never heard of AGP. We'll get to that in a bit. I didn't know anything about this. I just thought it was a bit odd. It was just a bloke in, that crotchless lingerie. That's all I saw. And of course, as an aficionado of the male appendage, I saw his and I was like, okay, wow. Wow, I said. And, I did all the apologizing. I said, I really hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but that is a beautiful penis. I mean, come on. That is a beaut. And it was, if you're into that kind of thing, a stunning penis. I said, please don't get rid of it. And when he said, Irish Boy 1888 thinks he's being clever now. He's going, no, why were you in a women's ward? Because it was visiting hour. So male visitors are allowed. Do you think that women's husbands aren't allowed to visit them on a women's ward? It's at least if you're going to come with an argument, then at least come with a good one. Yeah. Oh, thanks. At least he says, or they say fair enough, like, duh. So where was I? Right. So he's showing me that picture. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's beautiful. Please don't get rid of it. And he's like, he actually said, when I said it's beautiful, he said, and that's after 1 year on estrogen, because if you're on estrogen and your hormone balance changes as a man, your genitals don't get the hormones that they need to keep them kind of healthy. That's why some start to experience atrophy down there. And so he said that his was basically even bigger and fatter before he went on estrogen. And this is just such a typical bloke thing to do, to boast about their penis. It's like same with Bruce Jenner when he was on Celebrity. I'm Jungle, get me out of here. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. He still has his, and he was talking to two of the female contestants, and he said, "Oh, I still have more than most guys have down there." And it's boasting about size. It's such a male thing to do. So this guy was doing that, even though he was planning to have it chopped off, basically. So. Oh, Irish Boy. Oh my God. This is going to be like trans bingo. Here he goes. Would you rather have a dead son or a trans daughter? Everyone get your TRA bingo sheets out. We're all going to win tonight. So now I look back and I'm like, well, hold on a second. You were on a women's ward. There's a man on the women's ward. And he's showing you pictures of his cock on the women's ward. Like, now I look back and I'm like, what the hell? What was he thinking? Only about himself, of course. And the other, like the woman opposite us, like she did keep looking at us. She looked very uncomfortable. And now I'm like, she had every right to be uncomfortable. And then she had a visitor, and then they pulled that curtain round. She clearly wanted privacy, which, that's something that Teresa Steele said in her speech on the 1st of May. She said, women are fully entitled to expect that women-only wards contain only women. Like, why do we have to explain that? Let's have a look at the chat. Red said so. Shh, Irish. The grown-ups are listening to Meadow. Irish boy says, I don't mind Irish boy being here. Irish boy says, I know many people that nearly unalive themselves and only didn't because they got surgery. Well, and I mean, that just shows how messed up people are that they want to go that far. You know, there are huge issues that they have. And in fact, if they have those issues, they should not get the surgery at all. Someone who's in that frame of mind should not get the surgery. I think it's criminal that these surgeons are performing these operations on people in such with such a fragile state of mind. It should not be done. Someone else in the chat says, I don't know how you pronounce this, Xemic6825, very catchy. If they're suicidal, they should seek mental help. Duh. And if they are so obsessed like these, look, sometimes when we talk about the reality of sex and the sex human body, and that we all know that what sex comes with what package, right? Because the package is part of the package, then we're called genital fetishists and obsessed with genitals. And here you have people and they're like, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, or I'll kill myself. Oh my God. What, you think that's the sign of a healthy, sane mind? Absolutely not. And like this, at the time, friend, he was like, I've got my surgery lined up. I'm so excited. He was excited about it. Like, this is mad. And he had that surgery, about 6 months after. In Wimbledon, there's a big private hospital that the NHS uses because they gave him a choice. He could either have it done in an NHS hospital or the private one in Wimbledon. Forgot the name. But it's one of the ones where most of them get it done, because then he'd get like his own private room. Right, because he wants his own private room, right? But that woman opposite him, when he had his hip broken, she couldn't have her own private room, just so she wouldn't have to deal with men in the same ward. It's always double standards. So, and I did go along to him to see him in Wimbledon, and God, I even got a card. I got a pink card that said, it's a girl. I'm sorry. Because I just wanted to be nice. And again, at that visit, he was boasting about it because apparently he'd asked the doctor, will it be deep enough? It's just the inverted thing of, I've got the biggest dick, or I've got a big one. Yeah. Now it's like, how deep is my love? Is my love? You know, it's like, how deep is it? That really mattered to him. And apparently the doctor had said, look, the only thing you have to worry about is that you don't lose anything down there. Ho ho. And then after he had that surgery, like not the hip one, there's a question in the chat. If you faced the same situation and visited someone in hospital, what would you say or do differently now? Oh, well, we probably wouldn't even be friends then, because obviously we're not friends anymore now because I don't toe the line. And that's kind of made me reflect on the friendships that I used to have with these type of men. What kind of friendships were they? Because hello, Cat can too. I just felt like an extra. That friendship was all about me validating them and me affirming them and showing support to them. It was never really much of a two-way street. As soon as I said, one of them called me sis, and I'm like, I'm not sis. And that's when things started getting tetchy just that easily. And one was talking about, if a child says they're trans, then you have to believe them. And one was talking about wanting to organize mountain biking competitions, and running a YouTube channel about it. And I said, oh, well, who would you compete against? And he went, women. And I was just like, what? And as soon as I didn't even necessarily challenge it, but as soon as you didn't go along with it, those friendships changed very quickly. So they weren't really friendships. They were very superficial. Pop the Kettle of mountain biking with that new whole thing. That was somebody else who had it done at least 20 years ago. But anyways, I digress. I was talking about the boasting element, right? So once he'd had that surgery done down there, he changed his Facebook name to a play on words on vagina. Everything became about, I have a vagina. At the time, I just passed it off as, oh, that's a bit weird. And I moved on. Now I know this guy was a full-on raging AGP. He then started posting pictures of his dilators, so that it doesn't close up. He posted that on Facebook, just like a picture of them in like the cabinet in the bathroom. And he's like, I'm working my way up to the biggest one. Just like, yeah, because that's what women post on Facebook, isn't it? That's such a woman thing to do. Boasting about how deep it is, calling yourself after, a play on words on vagina, posting your dilators online. But again, I just sort of brushed it off. Charles says that's fetish behavior. Exactly. And it turns out that this guy was a fetishistic cross-dresser before he went down this road. So, somebody asked earlier, what is an AGP? So for anyone who doesn't know, it's a bloke who gets off on the idea of imagining himself as a woman, right? So you get guys and they get turned on by wearing women's clothes. AGPs take that a step further and then apply that to their body. So they don't just want to wear the clothes, they want their body to become the costume. And they get rather a thrill from imagining themselves as a woman. It turns them on. It's a fetish. And oh, I don't have it here. It's in the living room. This is nothing new. This has been studied since at least the 1910s. So at least 100 years ago, they had different words for it now. So AGP, orthogonophile, is a term that Blanchard came up with, a sexologist. But in the 1910s, there was another word for it. They were then also, they'd already coined transsexualism, but they had a separate word for the fetishistic man who gets turned on not just by wearing women's clothes, but the idea of themselves being a woman. So this is, Ray Blanchard isn't the first one to look at that. He just named it AGP. And, what's that guy from Canada? Forgot his name. I used to think of him as one of the good guys because he was critical of, putting kids on the blockers. And then, what was his name? He was one of the biggest names in gender dysphoria. Not Michael Bailey, the other guy. He used to run a clinic in Canada, and then he was basically kicked out because there was a change of law. And then everything became affirmative. Not John Money, not James Kenton, not Jordan Peter. Zucker, yes! Thank you, Rusty Coles. What was his first name? Anyways, Zucker guy. So he once was part of a panel at a GenSpec conference. And one of the things that he pointed out was Kenneth Zucker. Thank you, Joey. Joey in the house. Nice to see ya. Right. So even Kenneth Zucker admitted on that panel that the reason they started offering surgeries is because they couldn't cure those guys of their fetishes. their fetish to be a woman. They couldn't, any normal therapy didn't help. They couldn't help these guys that way. So they're like, okay, well, let's just give them the surgeries then. So the very basis, I'm not saying that every man who goes down this route does it for that reason, but the very basis of it historically has been that it's rooted in fetish. So, sorry, just having a quick look at the chat. What's going on? Oh, here we go. Oh, look, another one for the bingo, guys. So Irish Boy now says, do you really think that people would be so committed to get into women's spaces? They would go through years of transition. And then he goes, no, you would just walk in. Yes, that's what they do. We get both, by the way, Irish Boy. You get the people who go through the surgeries and those who don't, but we should all consider them to be trans enough, right? I mean, surely, Irish Boy, you would not make a distinction between someone who's had the surgeries and someone who hasn't, right? Because they're all just as much woman, right? Or are you a little bit of a transmedicalist, true scummy Irish Boy? None of it ever makes any sense. So, Mitsususa says, sorry, even the gay men who do it are living some sort of fetish. You know what? I agree. Again, I'm not saying it applies to every single one, but some people, they make this distinction because Ray Blanchard made that distinction. Blue Eyes says, totally off topic, but excellent jumper. Thank you. My sister got it from me a few years ago. So I forgot what I was saying now. Something about surgeries, no surgeries. Oh, I don't know. See, this is what happens when I jump into the chat. I forget what I'm saying. Oh no, remember now. Right. Ray Blanchard, he made a distinction between the AGPs and what he called the homosexual transsexuals. So you basically had the gay men who went down that path, and then you had the straight blokes with the fetish, and they're the AGPs. Joey, thank you so much for your super chat. Great content lately. Love the mix. Thank you very much. And and here we have the next bingo card, next bingo box from Irish Boy. It's anti-trans hate. You're fueling anti-trans hate. Right, we're going to tick them all. I told you we'll all be a winner by the end of this. So I think that's a bit simplistic to have that distinction between the so-called homosexual ones and the straight ones. I think there can be an overlap. Why not? Oh, another one. $5 from Geek Girl 2000. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll give that a heart. Oh, and Joey's one as well. Heart. Let's heart them all. So, and there's look at someone like Monroe Bergdorf. Okay, to me, he's a classic example of the gay male AGP. And some people say to me, well, you can't be AGP if you're gay. Why not? Why not? If they get so obsessed with the idea of being a woman and that they can turn on a man as a woman, how could that not develop into an AGP type thing? And Bergdorf in particular, he said he got his sex education from porn, as a teenager. So those were the ideas that shaped his conception of what a woman is, what a so-called attractive woman is, or a desirable woman. It's like that other bloke, Juno Dawson. Well, now he goes by Juno Dawson. He's said similar things. He's like, when he said something like he wants to walk down the street, he doesn't want people to see him as a man or as trans. He wants people to see him as a woman. He wants to be desired as a woman. The same with Bergdorf, but it's their very limited male reference idea of a woman. So I don't see why these two things are exclusive. And also there's an old documentary, I think it's from the 60s even, early 60s that I saw, where they followed four guys who, wanted to become women. And the host, even in the early 60s, they're all going, oh, we should be nice to these people. We should be kind, oh, we accept them for who they are. And the whole idea that there was a woman brain in a man's body, blah, blah, blah. These ideas go back a long, long time. And then they followed them going about their day-to-day lives. And so this one guy was a hairdresser, so he's in the salon. Then they film him doing women's hair, and then they film him walking down the street, and then he stops outside a lingerie shop, like an Ann Summers type shop, early 60s version. And he pauses, and then you just hear his voice as a voiceover, right? That's how they did it. So they've scripted and staged this, right? And he stands there sort of looking at the mannequins wearing the lingerie. And then he says that he's imagining himself wearing that stuff. And then he feels a certain tingle. That's the word he used, a tingle. I feel a tingle. But then he goes one step further. Then he says, and then I imagine men looking at me wearing that and getting that same tingle. And there's the erotic aspect of it. So, it's I don't see why gay men can't be AGPs as well. So yeah, I don't think those two are exclusive. And it's very clear now when I look back that man I used to know was just a full-blown AGP. And one day, because I actually stayed with him a week before he had, that surgery. He was very happy to talk about it, but of course that's part of it, isn't it? And yeah, then it was gone. And we were walking down the street, and I do remember feeling very protective, even though he was so much taller than I was, and definitely not a small man. But because he was wearing women's clothes, I was like, oh, if people give him grief, or give him evils, I'll be there. I'll be there to protect him. So I just naturally try to, I just felt protective. And that's purely based on ignorance. All my empathy came from ignorance. So as soon as I started in 2019, when I started going, oh, hold on, what's going on? Very soon, I changed my mind about a lot of things. Thank you so much, Roland Butter, for your £4.99. Keep up the good work. Yes, will do. There's an interview coming very soon with Kath Lang. We did the interview on Friday, and that's about the capture of the BBC. Right, she worked at the BBC for 25 years. On the news side of things, the BBC is such a huge organization, and they've got so many different parts to the business. And news apparently is very different from all the rest of it, all the other content. News goes by more stricter rules, and that's why, especially in terms of being factual and accurate. Obviously, they've let that slip on the news side, but now that that's sort of coming back, that's a good sign, because that will trickle through to all the rest of it as well. Oh, hello, Peppermint Patty. Aha, buyers at the BBC. You say this should be a juicy one. I'm halfway through editing it, so that should go out maybe tomorrow, maybe Tuesday. But yeah, Kath has worked at the BBC for 25 years, senior journalist there. So she had quite some unique insights. And Swiss Miss, thank you very much for your 5 Swiss francs. Right, okay. So where was I? Right, we were walking down the street. I felt protective of him just because I knew nothing. I had no idea what all this trend stuff was about. So that's where I was at the time. And then when I saw some weird things, I just thought, oh, that's weird. But that was it. I didn't give it any further thought. And it's embarrassing thinking back about that. But, you know, you live, you learn. And as soon as I saw that there was something up, I was like, whoa, this is not just a little bit wrong. This is very, very fucking wrong. And here we are. So now, obviously, we've had the Supreme Court ruling. And I don't know if the NHS still allows men like him on men's wards. I think because there was something called Annex B, that was the policy in place to allow basically men to identify into the women's ward. I don't know if that's been removed. If anybody knows about that, pop it in the chat. I don't know if that's been taken out. And even though we've had the Supreme Court ruling, the Darlington nurses are still having to go to court. Sandy Paggy still had to go to court. Kelly J. Keane often talks about a bloke who identifies as a woman, again, dresses up in fetish gear and posts pictures of it online. And he was actually running a female-only ward. I don't know if he's still there. And at the Darlington nurses, with both these guys, right? Rose from the Darlington nurses case, and then Dr. Upton. Dr. Upton even said if a woman has requested, single-sex care, or like a woman just wants a female nurse or doctor to look after her, that this bloke, Dr. Upton, said that he would still treat her. Like these guys will just, they don't give a shit about anything. It's all about them. I'm a lady, affirm me. That's why now we also have all these guys going into the women's toilet, even after the Supreme Court ruling, going, oh, I'm in the women's toilet. Oh, the sky hasn't fallen in. Ooh, I'm in the women's toilet. Because they like to, it's a power trip for them. Joey says, we're waiting for the Sel Grover judgment. Yes. And I don't know which way that's going to go. Actually, I don't think that's going to go our way, to be honest. But then if she loses, that's when they will take it to the High Court. And that's where they can challenge the actual law itself from if I remember correctly. I think that was always part of the plan. And it's just crazy that it's necessary. But in Australia, the problem is the law was changed. The Sex Discrimination Act was changed in 2013. That they completely rewrote the meaning of sex. So it's ridiculous. Getting that turned around is not going to be easy. So good for Sal for taking that on, but what a toll that's taking on her and her life. I think it's been 5 years that she's already been fighting that nonsense. Okay, what else? Oh, hello, Peppermint. Thank you so much for your £20. Let me give you a heart. Guys, these donations, they really help. There's a detransitioner who's asked me to interview him, a gay man, young gay guy. And I really want to do those interviews face to face. I think they're so much better than when you just have all these talking heads on a screen. But he's in completely the other end of the UK. So I'm looking at flights. So these donations all contribute towards, things like that. So thank you very much for everyone who's donated this evening. Let me see what else is going on in the chat. Oh, Charles, thank you. £4.99. And say hello to your mum. I hope she's well. And Dave Hall says, Mr. Menno, you're a wonderful, magnificent. Well, ha 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 ha. Okay, now I'm going shy. But thank you. So, and Rusty Cole says the Yogyakarta principles had a massive effect. This is true. This is true. And that goes back to what, 2006, 2007? All this goes back much further than a lot of people think. It's not just the last 10 years. Ted still asks, Mr. Menno, if you met up with an old friend who was now identifying as trans and taking hormones, how would you approach talking about it with them? I'm in this situation and I don't want to lie. These conversations are very tricky, Ted. I had a conversation last year with a friend who just put his son on blockers. So I was in that situation, and I didn't know anything about it until, we're just, he doesn't live in London or in the UK even. So he just came over to London for a few days, and then he told me, and then I thought, oh, I don't want to come out, really strong and judgmental, because I thought then, the shutters are just going to close and I won't be able to get anywhere with him. So the first thing I said was, wow, that must be really difficult for you as a parent, right? And he said, yes. So I first started talking about what it was like. We started talking about what it was like for him as a dad. So in the case of you and your friend, I would do this genuinely. I wouldn't pretend to be interested. I would be genuinely interested why they chose to go down that path. Because obviously, if he's made that commitment, he's not suddenly going to change his mind. It's more about you sort of understanding what it was that drove him. And even if he feels that he understands that himself, because there's quite a few of these people that say, I'm trans. And then they're like, I don't even know what it means. Haha, they try to sort of joke about it. But so there's quite a few things happening in the chat now. Charles, I said thank you to you. And here's Denise. Denise, thank you so much for your £10. Really, I always appreciate this so much. I know that, times are tough. So really appreciate the support. Let me just go back to somebody else asked the question as well. Aya Lion says, how do you feel about gay men who medicalize and call themselves straight women? And call the men who date them straight or no gay. See, that's an easy one. I mean, those guys, they that's just about internalized homophobia, where they can't accept that they are males attracted to other males. And the reason they make such a thing about, I've backed myself a straight man, he's a straight man, that's because that then gives them the ultimate validation that they are a straight woman on the inside. So that one's quite straightforward. But Ted's situation, where you have the friend, do you know what? I would give that friend of yours quite a bit of time, take him out for a walk or a meal, really sit down and have a long chat, and then make it about them. First of all, just how long have you felt this way? And don't challenge it too much in the beginning. Just listen, just absorb, right? And collect golden nuggets. That's what I always call them, get some key insights. And then they feel like you're giving them space and you're listening and you're respectful and all that. And then you can ask some questions. Like what I asked my friend was, have you heard of the CAS review? He'd never heard of the CAS review. I said, so your son is on blockers now? Yes, he got his first shot a month ago. I said, okay, do you know how these work? Do you know how they work? And I didn't go, what, you've never heard of the CAS review? Because obviously, if you use that kind of tone of voice, people shut down, or the shutters come down. So I always like to think that there's a way that you can get in. There's always a window of opportunity where you can connect with another person. Maybe it's a bit naive, but I do like to think that that's true in most cases. That sort of reach another person and get a message through. So give them time, give them space, ask lots of questions, but like real from your own curiosity, right? Not from a judgmental place. And then see if there are some key insights that you can get. And you don't have to do this all in one conversation. You know, take your time and don't put pressure on yourself to achieve lots of things in just the one conversation, because usually you can only just plant a seed or just make a small beginning somewhere. And then just see if you know, because how your friend feels is one thing, but how you feel is another. And hopefully you can have an honest conversation about, you know, what that means to you and your friendship together. And how does your friend see that friendship developing? Do they just expect you to go along with it? Or does, you know, if especially if you've given them all the time and space, is that going to be reciprocal? Will they give you that time and space as well to explain where you stand and what you think about things? And hopefully, you know, you can keep the friendship. But if they all go, if your friend is all gung ho, trans women are women, then I can see that that's going to be difficult. It's like the people that I used to know. Those friendships, they didn't last, but that's because they didn't allow any dissent, right, or wrong think. You know, even me just saying I'm not cis, I'm just a bloke because of my sex, you know, that didn't go down very well. So that just showed me that those friendships weren't really valuable friendships in the first place. Right, let's see if there's any more questions. Oh, I think it's Josa Pienza says, I'd express concern for the health side effects and start there gently. I think that's good advice. And some of you really need to come up with better names, you know. Here's user ER4IO, yeah, whatever. Pre-surgeries need group therapy with Az Hakim. Lots of his clients decided against surgery. It's a very good point. So Az Hakim is the only consultant psychiatrist in the UK who specializes in, you know, gender dysphoria. Whether that's even a thing is a whole other conversation, and how that got into the DSM. Amy Souza is really good on that. And I might do a video about that or interview her about that specifically. I just forgot where I was going. And Ted says, yeah, good advice to listen to them and try to understand them first, and after some time ask questions about how much they know about the science and the law of it. I think that's the way to go, Ted, and see if they're willing to understand my perspective too. Thanks. I hope it helps, because, you know, at the end of the day, you do want to help people. And it's like with that friend of mine and his son, he actually said, see, and if I had never created that space to have this conversation, he would have never come out with that. So my friend said to me, so this is the dad of the boy who was put on blockers at 15. He said, I actually think that he's just afraid to grow up. You know, the boy's autistic, awkward, no friends, lonely. He's always on his iPad, on TikTok, and got bullied a lot. So there's a lot going on there. And he says, I think he's got Peter Pan syndrome. I said, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, I just think he's afraid to grow up and, you know, go into the world and become a man. So he's trying to hold on to childhood and doesn't want to change. He's got Peter Pan syndrome. And it was only until the very end that I said, do you remember when you told me that you think he's got Peter Pan syndrome? He's like, yes. And I said, well, but now you're medically inducing that. with the blockers, because that stops the development of his body and it stops the development of his brain. So the very thing that you're scared of him having, you're now affirming that medically. And that's when the penny dropped. Now, I don't know if since he's come off the blockers, I hope so, but I've been kind of too scared to check, because I just dread the news that he's still on them, because then he'll have been on them for a year. And I just find that so upsetting. The other thing that he said about his son, or rather about the clinic, look, he's a guy with a high-flying job. He used to be married, but him and his husband, they've split up, and I don't know what the other, what his ex-husband makes of all of it. But he's always busy. He's got loads of things on, and he hadn't looked into it. So I kind of wanted to go, are you crazy? This is your son, adopted son. And I'm like, how can you not look into? That's what I thought. But I thought if I say it like that, then again, that ends the conversation. So he then said, but I trust the clinic, they're the ones wearing the white coats. That was the phrase that he used. He just put his trust in the experts. And the experts aren't actually the experts. They're not experts. They're just like, it's like, the Wild West, all this gender medicine. They're just making it up as they go along. They don't have the evidence. They can't replicate evidence from previous studies. But they just keep going with it. They keep changing. Even at the Dutch clinic, they published an article a year or 2 years ago that said, in terms of effectiveness, how do we measure that? And maybe all that we should look at with puberty blockers is in terms of effectiveness. Do they stop puberty? Yes, they do. Ta-da! Never mind the negative effects. Never mind the impact, the mental health impact, and all the rest of it. No. Does it stop puberty? It stops puberty. Okay, done. Let's keep going. Oh my God. Anyways, so just back to that friend in hospital. Now I look back on that and I'm like, how could I not see that? And how could I not have any time for that woman who was diagonally across from us? And sometimes I hope, how nowadays online it's easy to connect. I'm like, I wish I could apologize to her, because now I can see how awful she must have felt. Now, in that room, there was also a much older woman, as I mentioned earlier. I think she was late 70s, maybe even early 80s. And she was all the way near the window. And then at one point, a doctor came together and helped her practice walking with a Zimmer frame, because, she'd also had a hip operation. And as she's just sort of slowly walking down that ward with her Zimmer frame, and then she passes us and she looks at that bloke in the bed and she goes, "Tomorrow I'm gonna race ya." And at the time I thought, see, if an old biddy like that can be open-minded about him being here, then why can't that woman across from us? Straight away, I just made it about, I didn't say bigot, I didn't quite think that, but it went down that in that direction, didn't it? It's like, if you're not nice to my friend, then you're narrow-minded. And it's such a superficial take. So on the one hand, I'm glad I'm not there anymore and I've wisened up a bit. On the other hand, sometimes I do miss the days where I knew nothing about any of this, because it's dark. It's very dark. Right. So that was my experience with that friend in the hospital. Now in 2025, as I mentioned earlier, we've got Dr. Upton saying at a tribunal that he's biologically female. We had Rose in the Darlington nurses tribunal, basically just saying he didn't really care about anything, right? He just said no to everything. I haven't really followed that, but I need to look up a thread on Twitter somewhere where there's a good summary of the hearings and what was said and what arguments were made. Right. And even oh, another thing I forgot to say, sorry, is I mentioned that with that friend who was in hospital, that one day we were walking down the street and I felt protective. And then we talked about that. And he said, you know, when people see me, they don't see a woman, they see a trans woman. And at the time I was like, oh, wow, this guy is based. You know, we didn't use that word in those days, but I thought, wow, you know, he's got his feet on the ground. Did I ever call him she? I don't know. I don't think so. I just used his name, or the one, you know, he chose. But yeah, I remember thinking, wow, see, this is good. This is a down-to-earth person, even though he was going to have his dick chopped off. I thought he was down to earth. But I really, at the time, I appreciated that, because he wasn't saying he was a real woman. See, I never came across that until I picked. I'd never heard that before. Like because I picked at Pride, London Pride in 2019, because that's the first time I ever saw the slogan or the mantra, trans women are women. I'd never seen that before. I'd never heard that before. Not from those people that I knew, those guys. They'd never said that. So when he said, yeah, I'm a trans woman, I'm not a woman, I'm like, yay, this is great. But now he's changed his mind. Now on International Women's Day, he posts stuff like, why can't they include us? We are women. And it's like, oh, gosh. So, yeah. Anyways, is there anything else that I want to say? If you have any final questions for me, put them in the chat now, because we've been talking for nearly an hour, so I think that's a good time to wrap it up. Yeah, okay, basically, government has to do its job. And I can't believe that Bridget Phillipson is stalling so much with that EHRC guidance, that code of practice. She needs to lay that before Parliament, and now she's stalling. She needs to get on with it. And Keir Starmer said in Parliament, in the House of Commons this week, that he's fully behind the Supreme Court ruling and it needs to be implemented. Well, then get on with it. Dusty asks, are you going to address the BBC Revelations, Menno? Well, I did an interview with Kath on Friday. She worked for the BBC for 25 years. So I've done most of the editing, but I'll finish that up tomorrow. Either get it live tomorrow evening or Tuesday. And oh, thank you, Forens, for your $2. Love that sweater, Menno. Thank you very much. It's so warm because it's getting chilly now this time of year. Yes, Charles, it's Kath Lang. So I interviewed her on Friday. Semix asked, what are you going to do now? Restful sleep? Oh, I'm going to have pancakes with cinnamon. And then, well, it's 10 o'clock now. So yeah, and then wind down, have an early night, and then get up early and edit, and get this video out, because I think that's going to be a good one. And in terms of, you know, the Supreme Court ruling, it's like the highest court in the land. You'd think the resistance against it is quite something else, you know, not just from trans organizations, but also from the government and professional bodies. So what I'd like to do is do a song about it. It's an idea that I've had for a while, maybe 3 years. But now is, I think, the perfect moment to get that song done. I'm going to ask a few women to sing on it for the chorus. I want the chorus to be them, really. And that's all about how we've got to keep turfing, basically. So in September, I was at a protest in Edinburgh outside Parliament there, Holyrood. That was organized by For Women Scotland. And then 1st of November at the 199 Days Later, where I met Roisin Murphy. Oh my God, that was amazing. I still can't believe that. I've been listening to her music ever since. Like, I knew her most successful stuff, but now I'm discovering like so much other stuff that she's done that I absolutely love. Check out the track Narcissist by Roisin Murphy. I love Narcissist. Right, so this song is all about, okay, you know, we've had a good year in many ways. Good things have happened. But like also, if you look at sports, there are still at least about 35 sporting bodies that still allow men in the women's category. And other sporting bodies are like, they only protect elite sports, which makes no sense because most women and girls take part on a grassroots level. And if at a grassroots level they're competing against men, then obviously that's going to make it even harder for these women to get to the elite level. It's like, duh, this is all simple and common sense. So we've got to fight back on all fronts. We have to keep going. So I just thought maybe if we put a song out, just to give people some oomph and inspiration, and yeah, let's do this. Let's keep going, as tiring and draining and frustrating as it can be. So that's going to be to a song by Fairground Attraction. It was their breakthrough hit. When was that? 1988 or 89, I think. Scottish band. They had a song called Perfect. Ground Control Soul says Tish Hyman in LA. Wow, I thought I might just ask her to do a rap on it because there's an instrumental section on the song, so you never know. But the original is called Perfect. It's got to be perfect. So I thought I'll change it to We've Got to Keep Turfing. So working on the lyrics with Turf Incognito, my partner in crime when it comes to lyrics and songs. So it's mid-November now, so I better get my ass in gear and get that sorted. But you know, that'll be a positive one to enter 2026 with. Right, and here is Ruby Katz with £20. Thank you so much. And you're saying for your flight. Thank you. Progress cannot be made without change. Those who cannot change their mind cannot change anything. Very true. And as much as that, some like to call me a bigot, bigots don't change their minds. I have. And Denise is singing along in the chat. It's got to be worth it. Yes, exactly. So, okay. Rusty Cole says the Davy Waver reaction video is one of my favorites. Thank you. I've watched it multiple times. You know that, yeah. Thank you so much for that. And Sam says, Love Perfect. Oh, it's such a good song. But, you know, because it's such a good song, and it's so identified with the a female vocalist, I don't know if I can pull that off, you know, the verses. So that's why I'm going to get a lot of women singing on it. And I thought, maybe, who knows? I can always ask, right? I can always ask Roisin if she wants to be on it. You never know. You never know if you don't go. Aim high, and, you know, what do they say? Aim for the moon, you might end up on the stars, something like that. So. And here's another user whose username is user. Oh, that's you. Right. I support your Patreon too. Thank you so much for that. But still, a few spare dollars for you here, dear Menno. Thank you so much for your 10 American dollars. Honestly, I appreciate it so much. Right. Okie dokie. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And I shall see you in the next one. So hopefully, well, at least one video out next week, which will be the BBC one. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to go to, there's a party basically for Transgender Trend. It's that 10th anniversary, 10 years. Can you believe that? 10 years ago, they published their first blog about the dangers of puberty blockers. 10 years. Yeah, this isn't going to be over in a day, guys. So that's why we got to keep going. So this can be hopefully one of our anthems. All right, Dusty, thank you so much for joining. Denise, good evening. Sam says, I reckon you can pull it off. I'll try. I might have to learn some auto-tune. Good night, Ted. Good luck with that conversation. Take it easy and go gently, and hopefully that will get somewhere. Natalie, good evening. And Ren sits so. Bye. Good night all, and stay safe out there to grab control. And once again, thank you. I always find it really weird ending a stream. It feels rude in a way. Oh, and Duck Return says, please let us know when the next video will be, as I never get notifications. Okay, in that case, check. Just go back to my channel on your phone, unsubscribe, then resubscribe, and hit that notification buttons and select the bell, and then say for all notifications, right? Seeking Finding says, thanks for everything you do, Menno. Thank you very much. It's an honor. And I don't know what this means. Why you always called disconnect? I don't know what that means. But someone just says, eat poop. No, thank you. I'm going to have pancakes. So good night, everyone. Good day for those who've just woken up. I saw there was someone from Japan earlier. Thank you very much for joining all the way from Japan. I'm going to end the stream. Click the button end. So, ciao, everyone. Oh, I mean, just disconnect without waiting. Well, here we go. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.